Well, welcome to Noel's World of Whiskey, and it is 2026. And tonight we are going to talk about the standouts in my whiskey collection. I have whiskeys from various parts of the world, and so I did some inventory, and that's why I have whiskey everywhere. And I spent the last few days with trying to decide what are the standouts, and it'll be in the last year, maybe the last couple of years. And we're going to start with Canadian whiskey. And why is that? Well, I'm from Canada, and Canadian whiskey is affordable. So traditionally we've been noted for our rye, but rye didn't always contain rye. In fact, maybe a small proportion of rye. Now, I'm just going to bring some whiskeys out. We know Wiser's and Hiram Walker and certainly Canadian Club, a lot of the more famous distilleries there. Pike Creek, one of the newer productions of whiskey. This is a 21-year-old. Now this is, you could call this a rye, but there's going to be corn in here. Anyways, this is something that I have a series of these. I have actually 3 of these. So this is the 42. I celebrated with my brother and family there. When my mother passed away, and also in memory of my dad, who was a Canadian Club. He drank Canadian Club. Did he drink something like this? No. We're going back, I'm going back 50, 60 years here. No, he did not drink that. He would have given anything to probably drink this. So the 42, great whiskey. I think this is one of the most affordable whiskeys on the planet. That is 42 years old. Wiser's also has a 42 excellent whiskey too, but this was the first to come out with a whiskey with such longevity. And you can see I've got the 44. I really like this stuff here. Look how dark that is. It's all natural color too, by the way. This is one of my favorites. I do have the 45-year-old. That is a classic as well. Another collector. I'm going to wander a little bit into single malts because we know all these famous distilleries here. Gibson's, etc. And of course, we all know about Crown Royal. But anyways, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the single malts here now. Single malt distillery that got started, the first one in North America that got started, and back in 1990. And of course, Glen Breton. And of course, they battled with that name with the with all the legal people out of Scotland there. Fought it in the courts, and it actually pretty much sunk the owner financially. But they did win in the end. And this is North America's first single malt whiskey. Back in 1990, they put together the distillery and the whiskey. And I'm going to say this is an excellent whiskey for the money still here in Canada and around the world. And I've just got an 18-year-old coming, another 15-year-old coming from Alberta. I do like this stuff. It is a distillery I've got that I am going to be out visiting. And I'm going to mention that the Canadian distilleries that followed this distillery were actually with a single malt. Now these distilleries, a lot of these distilleries were built before that, but I'm talking single malt. So I'm going to give 2 brewers the credit up in the Yukon. They were probably the second in Canada, and probably I'm going to say their whiskeys go back to 2009, and then we're looking at, of course, the distillery that I live very close to. I watched them build it, and I used to actually work on the farm where that, when I wasn't commercial fishing, where that distillery is, and that is Shelter Point Distillery. So I did know one of the owners quite well. In fact, he worked with me up at Mount Washington Resort, and so I know that and sort of watched the history and the growth of Shelter Point. One of my favorites from Shelter Point, of course, is the 12-year-old. This is still under the radar. They've won so many awards and they're still under the radar. This one is definitely a unique tasting whiskey, being a farm that is on the ocean, and it has that malt taste from a Canadian island farm. That barley, you can taste it in this whiskey. So Macaloni out of Victoria. It is a younger distillery, but it had some incredible help from Mike Nicholson, who also helped Shelter Point get started. When he was retired from Diageo, this guy was a veteran. You know, like 20 plus distilleries he'd worked in. And so, but that isn't where it stops. They had Dr. Swan, the whiskey whisperer, or the Einstein of whiskey. So you have Dr. Swan, you've got Mike Nicholson, and then you have a Scotsman by the name of Macaloni, Graham Macaloni. So anyways, he's had a pretty fast road to success. The first standout was the Kildare, triple distilled, more of an Irish whiskey. This guy here did quite well, won quite a few awards. But I'm going to say that this is the cask strength version of it, so it's a little bit more potent than the one that won the awards. Macaloni Muscatel. And then we have the first in the world, Kelp infused. By the way, Washington Peat, for the last two whiskeys I mentioned, Washington Peat, and this guy here, Kelp infused. So working with the native people on that, we produce a very unique whiskey. So I'm going to move over the bourbon stuff. In the last year and a half, I haven't covered much bourbon because we've been kind of cut off to it. Let's take a look at other parts of the world right now. So I'm going to just jump right to Japan, because Japanese whiskey, after Scotland, it was the first really to take off. So the first two Japanese fathers, or they say the father is Masataka Tatsuro, but I think we have to mention Shinjiro Tori, because he was actually the first to build Yamazaki. He hired Masataka. Masataka was actually the educated one of the two in single malts. Not that Shinjiro Tori didn't know anything about whiskey, he did, but single malt whiskey was something unique, and Masataka Takasero went off to Scotland, and he studied in Scotland as well as he worked in the distilleries, and he learned how to make single malt whiskey. He brought that knowledge back with a wife, a Scottish wife, to Japan. And they ended up working for Shinjiro Tori, and they started off at Yamazaki. That is the oldest distillery in Japan. Eventually, after 10 years of working at Yamazaki, he resigned, and he went up and he started up his own distillery, Yoichi, up in Hokkaido. So anyways, so of course, Takasuro, named after Masataka. This is a whiskey they've been making for some time. It's a blended whiskey. This is a true single malt, and this is Miyageko, and it is the other distillery. It was built after Yoichi. The Yoichi is in the vault in the other room there. So now the other big company, of course, is Suntory. It's huge, and of course, that was Shinjiro Tori's company that he started. So anyways, that's a quick brief on Japanese whiskey. Standouts, I can't afford it. You know, I've got a few bottles of this stuff here. It's 12 years old, single malt, but you know, most of their whiskeys that are up in the 12 years of age are going to be $200 plus here in Canada. But India is starting to gain its own fame. It does do a different kind of barley. It uses a 6-row barley, much trickier to produce single malt whiskey with that barley, because it doesn't produce as much sugar, but it does give quite unique flavors. And of course, that's the uniqueness of Indian whiskey. It does have its own taste. When we look at that's around 2005 that it really started. Amroot really took off, and a couple years later it was Paul John out of Goa. Basically, I think there's Rampure, and that is another one of the older distilleries, but Indre is one of the newer ones. And we're going to now move toward Catalan. Catalan, again, about the same time frame. It started to produce, award-winning whiskeys. We'll call it tropical finishing is the best way to describe it. These are warm climates, so the difficulty is they lose so much to the angle share. They have to literally put this stuff underground in really cool areas. Otherwise, you can't make a profit. You lose too much whiskey in your cask. And we're going to talk about my trip to Australia. And I was sent down there with another fellow to help run a ski hill in Tasmania. And it was called Ben Lomond. And that's where I met the Larks, and they ran a we'll say a bar up on top of this mountain. And I can remember bringing down a whole pile of snowboards in a plane. And here I am up in the bar, Lark's bar up on Tasmania, up on the mountain there, and I bring a few of these boards in. The next thing I knew, I had them all sold. I think I brought 6 or 7 boards down with me. People in the bar just, oh, we've got to buy one of those, I also remember having pancakes at midnight. That was the big thing down there, eating pancakes at midnight. So just a little story of Bill Lark, of course, famous first single malt distillery in Australia. We have to mention, Lark and various other whiskeys that are doing quite well right now. If I was looking at blended scotches, and I got a whole bunch right over here, you can see them, right from the Johnny Walker Blue down to the Double Black. I'll tell you the one that stands out to me is one that you might not have even known about, and it's the XR21. This is my favorite, the 21-year-old, if you can get them all. I got a couple of these bottles because I knew that someday they will be collector's items. So there's the XR21, my favorite Johnny Walker, over the blue, okay? But the blue, is always still going to be really popular. This is the one that kind of became my favorite of the blended whiskeys, doers. And part of it was we look at a lot of 40% Johnny Walkers. I think the green is 43. That's the only one that I remember as being 43. But a lot of your blended whiskeys are 40%. This here is a 45, 46% whiskey. It's got some proof to it. It's non-chill filtered. It is natural color. This is a 21-year-old. This was a killer price. This is a 27. By the way, this here was the Oloroso here. If I remember rightly, this is the Palo Cortado. Excellent whiskey. Really good price on it there. And then, of course, we have the 32. And I have the 37 as well. I believe this guy here is the PX here, if I remember rightly. Yeah, this is a PX. So we're looking, I think the 37, what was the 37? I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was all more Oloroso casks than that. But anyways, those actually are my favorite of the blended Scotch whiskies. Now, looking at some other, if we're looking at blends, let's just fly through them. Here's a blended whiskey here. Well, they call it a pot still whiskey, but really there is grain alcohol in here. The proportion, we don't have it, but I can taste the corn, okay? It's just not my favorite. Some nights I like it, but it's an 18-year-old too. It should be mellow. And if I was to move on, I'm looking at, let's just look at, let's say, a Bushmills maybe. So we're looking at a Bushmills over here, a 16. The 16 Bushmills is always been a single malt. They do their core range. I'm going to talk the regular white bush, and then you get into what's called the black bush. They do have, grain alcohol in them, but when you start getting up to the 10 and the 12, those are single malts, the 16 single malts, and so on and so on. I'm going to say neither of those are over the top. My favorite whiskey, I'm going to give you a bit of an idea. I would drink a Redbreast, here's the 15, over Jameson any day. And even over most of the Bushmills, I prefer the redbreast. And part of it is that there is no grain whiskey in this. It is a mix of both barley and malted barley, and finished in sherry casks. So both the 15 and the 21 I have, they're remarkable whiskeys. The other one that really stands out, and it's actually not triple distilled, it's double distilled, and that's the Tyrconnels. So you look up here at the Tyrconnel, we're talking both like the 15 and the 16 I had, plus the regular Tyrconnel I have. Tell you they're single malts is what they are. They're closer to a Scottish, I'm not going to say a lowland whiskey. They're probably closer just to a Highland whiskey. I'm going to bring out some signatories here because they are, there's something about Andrew Symington, who owns the Signatory bottling and also owns Adrador. I just really like his stuff. So this one here I've sampled. It is just a killer drink. Craigellachie at its best, okay? Unchill, filtered, natural color. That's what Symington does anyways. This is an excellent whiskey. Came from the Strath. Got a good price on it. I haven't bought any Macallums lately. And it was neat to see a Macallum, Signatory Macallum's 15-year-old. So I went for it because I love the color. It's a Macallum's. I've always liked Macallum's. There's a lot of politics and amongst the reviewers and on Macallum's and their price, etc. But I've always liked them, and I still think there's something to use as a bar. Macallum's makes great whiskey. It's always just been the price. I'm going to go into another Craigellachie AD Rattray because we're going to be doing a kind of a shootout between all of these. This will go against the Signatory. I do like AD Rattrays in indie bottles as well. So it'll be nice. We'll be able to take that guy there and put it up against that. And of course, the one back here, the 17-year-old. Okay, I've had numerous Glengoynes through the years. The 18 and the 21 here, super whiskeys. They're only 43. Why am I bringing up a 43? Because it's a good whiskey. It's natural color. I just really like this whiskey at 43. It has the body of a 46. Okay. If we're looking at this guy here, we're going to think of Billy Walker. Okay, this is the cast strength of the Glenallachie whiskeys that won quite a few awards. This guy here, I've got several batches of this one here. I have batch 4, batch 6, a more recent batch, I forget what it is, 9 or 10, who knows. I just stopped buying them after all, even though they're all damn good. This is their 18 here. I like their 15. So if we're going to do Billy Walker, we're going to have to pull out the Revival. Yeah, we have the LRDs. The LRDs, of course, 18. And the Revival, 15. The other one that I really think stands out, and it doesn't seem to ever get bad reviews, is the Portwood. Really affordable. This is a really good whiskey as well in the... and I do have the cast strength in this up there. It's up there. Where is it here? Bingo. And it's another good one. Gets really good ratings. And again, the LRD. So you get up to the Parliament. Of course it has good ratings. Look what you're spending on it. You know, it's just horrendously expensive. So. You can't get a Springbank over here. So I'm recommending you go for either the 15 or the 21 in the Ben Romack. Now, you're not going to get the 46, you get 43. But this is Gordon MacPhail. They revived the Ben Romack distillery, and they've done an incredible job on these whiskeys. I'm a real fan of what they've done here. They're lightly smoked, and really they've got that funk, like that Campbelltown funk. These guys still have direct fired stills, which is a lot of maintenance, by the way. but it produces some pretty incredible whiskey. The 21 and 25 are still affordable. The 17, it's 43 ABV. I still like that stuff. The 15 is 46. Even their 12 is a really good whiskey. I don't think there's a bad mark on any of the reviews I've seen on any of their whiskeys. This brings us to the Aaron Distillery. I've done reviews on Aaron Distillery, and of course Lag, which is to the south. But anyways, Aaron has produced some pretty good whiskey through the years on the Isle of Ran. And this 18 this is one of the first over-the-top whiskeys that I tried. Sherry Bomb spends its whole life in sherry butts. It has gone up in price. I was paying less than $200 originally for this, and now it's up closer to $300. So here in Canada, might be a little less expensive in Alberta. Just one of those distilleries that is old. It's traditional. It has an amazing history. It even had to shut down when it ran out of water at one point in history. I've done lots of reviews on it. Glengarioch, and Glengarioch, and it's spelled Garioch, Garioch, if you don't know it, and you should know it. I just finished doing a review on 4 of the series, the Renaissance series. This, I think 15, 16, 17, and 18. 15 was complete a sherry cask, and the rest were, mixed casks. But I think what came out on top was this 17. This was another whiskey that is done very well. It's had nothing but good reviews. Annoch. Annoch from Knockdhu. Why is it called Knockdhu? People get Knockdhu confused with Knockdhu, which is a Diageo distillery. Annoch, and you can see the spelling of it there. The C is silent. It's a hill. You look out and you can see the hill, and that's of course Gaelic. So this is a small distillery producing a big product, and it's not quite the Sherry Bomb that the Aaron is, but it's a really well balanced whiskey. It gets very good reviews, and the best deal out there. One better deal is the 24. The 24-year-old Annoch is definitely one of the best priced 24-year-olds historically and presently. I am going to pull out something else here that is 24 years. This came from the Strath, thought to be a Glenlivet, 48%, 47.8%, pardon me. There's all sorts of little hints. Glenlivet. It does kind of taste like a Glenlivet anyways, but typical of that boutique whiskey company playing games with us. That's Master of Malt, by the way. I've done lots of reviews on them, so they've got some good whiskeys. This one is by far a super value. Came from the Strath down Island. And while we're talking about Master of Malt, or that boutique company, we have Adam Brands is the mother company, and we have Seaweed and Ian's and Diggins and Fire cask strength. So you're going to see a few of these bottles, but they all look the same from a distance. But what's different about this is the 18-year-old, and it's cask strength. And yes, it is a smoky whiskey. It's heavily peated. And this is not an island whiskey. This is a Highland whiskey. I come to Tobermory, of course, which is that colorful little town. It's on every postcard you can imagine in Scotland, and it's on the Isle of Mull. 21 years old, really well balanced whiskey, very much in the middle. This is a whiskey, you could serve it almost to anybody and they're going to like it. Isle of Mull, you have to mention Lecheg. I think that made the Isle of Mull more famous as Lecheg than probably the Tobermory. It's just recently Tobermory's really taken off, and they do produce gin there too in that distillery, but Lecheg is their peated version, and it is really a whiskey that is unique in that it's It's not quite as heavy as an Islay whiskey, but it's distinct, and because of the use of both Amenas, Pedro Amenas, and Oloroso casks, and some wine casks, this has a certain sweetness to it. We're talking about standouts here now. And this guy is a standout. And yet, how many people have had a Speyburn? This 18 has had the most positive response of most bottles I have in terms of my company. And it's a killer price. Whatever they've done in that distillery, and it's got a lot to do with their casks, and of course their stills, and the way they produce this whiskey basically in general is above par. So Speyburn, pay attention to it. I don't feel like bringing down the Springbanks. I've done a lot of Springbank, and I do have another Springbank review coming up. And I have an 18 in the Glen Scotia coming from Alberta. This is the 15. I've always liked the 15. Simple, basic, bourbon finish. I don't know if there's any Oloroso on this, but it's got so much character, you would think there's some additional finishing going on. This is their sherry bomb here, the Victoriana cask strength. This is amazing stuff. What is this stuff? Anyways, 54.2 rich. Okay. Very good reviews on this. Very good reviews on this. This constantly winning awards, if that's important to you. Glentoshers. Yes, we read that distillery. That's the Gordon MacPhail Indie bottle, cask strength. I believe that one is an 18. I have a 16 and an 18, so I'd have to look closer to see which one it is. When you're looking at Glentoshers, you don't see it usually under the Glentoshers name. You usually see it under one of the indie bottle names like Gordon MacPhail, maybe A.D. Rattray or Cadenheads or whatever. Tamdhu. I always called that because it was owned by Edrington at one time, as the Macallan replacement. In other words, an affordable Macallan, but because it was owned by the same people. So the Tamdhu 18 is an excellent whiskey, 15 there. So as I'm looking at some of the other whiskeys here, on this side here, I'm looking at the Tomatin, the 18. 18 did much better after opening up, sitting for a while and opening up. Good whiskey. Tomatin, my favorite though with Tomatin is going to be this guy here, the Kuboken Shoshu cask. I love this stuff, okay? I've got a cask strength in the vault that is pretty damn good. Talisker, always a killer whiskey, Talisker. I've got a few Taliskers in here. We did tour the distillery, and I've done I don't know how many reviews on Talisker, so we'll move on. Glenlivet, the 18, 40%, what can I say? It's an old standard. Deanston's probably the one that I've missed out on. It produces a pretty darn good whiskey, and it strikes off all the boxes. So I recommend it as an 18-year-old affordable. One of the best priced 21s you're going to see is the Lismore. We don't know if it is. It's owned by the Glenfarclas people, but is it a Glenfarclas? So I'm going to say that this whiskey here, as Michael Jackson, not the entertainer, the famous whiskey writer, said about this whiskey many years ago, the great all-rounder in the world of single malts. And it is the great all-rounder. Highland Park. And this particular bottle is an 18-year-old Highland Park. Now, I would praise Highland Park in their consistency. I don't always praise them on their price, because though it's really hard sometimes to understand why you pay so little for a single malt Twisted Tattoo, 46%, and that's the Highland Park Twisted Tattoo. And I forget it's finished in wine casks. Excellent whiskey, and it is an Edrington Highland Park, where this is an A.T. Rattray. I have 4 bottles of this. I'm on my 3rd here. The 4th one hasn't been opened. Another whiskey I sort of missed out on here is the Ardmore. There was a 20, an 18, and a 16. So I've got the 18 here. I did have the 20 when I was in Scotland. Ardmore, lightly peated. Love this stuff here. Good value for your money. Definitely worth mentioning. And one of my favorites. And if you can't afford a Diageo presentation, and some of the indie bottlers are pricing this thing up, but this guy here is an oldie goldie. The Linkwood 15, delicious stuff, good price on it. Everybody knows this guy here because Richard Patterson, the nose, the famous nose, Richard Patterson, humorous guy, brilliant whiskey maker. So he's always associated with Dalmore. He's now got a new distillery that they're doing a startup on. But this particular one here is, of all the Dalmores, is probably, I'm going to say it's going to be a toss-up. The sherry cask, it's only 43%. They throw so much bloody coloring in this thing. I think it's ridiculous. But other than that, it's a good whiskey, and it basically battles with Macallan and their sherry casks. So, you know, you put one up against the other, they're both really good whiskeys, and that's probably one of my favorite Macallans for the price. This is, what I like about this and Macallans, they always go on sale, and they're affordable, and they're good whiskeys. So I'm going to show you the one that is probably my favorite, and it is the Portwood. What I like about the Portwood, yes, it's 46%. And there's a lot of body to this. And there's a lot of body to their sherry cask as well. So why do I like these more than, let's say, the cigar malt or the 15? You know, certainly not going to pay what they want for the King Alexander or the 18. They're just better value for your money, and they really do showcase Dalmore, the taste. And when you start climbing up in price, it doesn't do anything more for the taste of the whiskey. So just north of Dalmore, we have the Minotane. And of course that is Glenmorangie. We covered its neighbor already, Balblair. And I am a Glenmorangie fan. And this one here, for some reason, was a standout. I'm not pulling out a Signet, which I do like, by the way. I'd have a Signet any day over an 18 Macallan's or a Blue. If you're talking a luxury whiskey, I would go Signet. Look for one on sale. Back in Alberta, they're only $250. So, but this is a Palo Cortado. I paid about $80 for this. This is an amazing whiskey. I've got a couple of bottles. Always buy a couple of bottles if you think you've got a goodie, if you can, because this was sold out. Literally after I bought 2, went back to buy another 2. It was sold out. For the price, 12-year-old, it was cheaper here than it was in Scotland. Try to figure that one out. As we're heading north of Glenmorangie, we're going to go past Dornoch, this small little distillery next to Dornoch Castle. The Thompson brothers, amazing, these young guys, what they've done, and what they're producing. They're bottling. They were bartenders, and they bought this hotel, this castle, turned into a hotel, and they were also bottlers. They have some great whiskeys. So if you get a chance, you're heading up that way, stop in at Dornoch Distillery. Well worth a visit. Clynelish, Brora. You're going to the town of Brora. You are going to have to go into Clynelish. And Brora has been reopened. It is something unique about their whiskey. But the 14 Clynelish has always been a pretty good value, considering it's a Diageo presentation, 46%. I really like the oily, waxy texture of the whiskey, and it's just so much in the middle. This guy here, Old Pulteney. Old Pulteney is in Wick. I have the 18 here. Used to have the 17. That was their popular whiskey. And of course, the 15. They used to be called the most northerly distillery in mainland Scotland, but not no more. Because today we have in Thurston, to the north of Wick, Wolfburn. And Wolfburn, to me, is going to be a whiskey that's going to give, maybe it'll help support Old Pulteney, and maybe it'll create more traffic on the whiskey trail, because they are out of the way. But this is an amazing 10-year-old whiskey, and I'm pretty sure it is sherry casks, and it's 10 years. It could be a 12-year, it could be a 14. It's a really premium 10-year-old whiskey. One of the new distilleries, they have a 12-year-old out. I am waiting patiently. I have got a hold of the distillery. When are we going to get it? I've been keeping an eye on Alberta. They'll get it before they get it out here. I like to really bring this up toward the end, because we keep forgetting the oldest distillery in Scotland. It is recognized as the oldest distillery in Scotland. There's quite a few old distilleries. Even Glengarrick is one of the older. Bowmore. I think this guy here, oh, by the way, Ball Blair even, This guy here has really caught my eye, because this new company, they were a luxury company, Lalique, and these are their bottles. You can see they've really upscaled the look of the bottle, but they haven't skimpied out on the way they're finishing this stuff. This is a very rich 12-year-old whiskey. Islay. Islay was the most famous whiskey place at one time. It still is today. It draws more visitors, Islay, because of what it is famous for, its whiskey. Ardbeg, Laphroaig, and Lagavulin, they are the three most famous distilleries, probably in Scotland, certainly on Islay. Ardbeg. So I pulled out a Corey Vracken. Not something that I think all of you really want to drink. It'll kick you in the butt. It's cask strength. I really kind of engaged in this stuff at one time, but I don't drink as much of it anymore. But what I will say is Corey Vracken, for some of you, might be a whiskey that if you're into the heavy peat, you might really like this stuff. The other one that I think really stands out is the 10. It's one of the best, most affordable whiskeys out there that I think is still a solid, classic, good peated whiskey from Islay. And then you have Uigeadail. This is what my company likes. Uigeadail. Certainly a whiskey that all of you should try if you're getting into peated whiskeys, okay? This might be, of all the Laphroaigs, might be the one I really like. You can get the 10, you get the select. They're good God, they're not expensive. The 10 cask strength, which this is probably one of my favorites. I do like the Cardias that come out with a different one every year at the Fédal Festival, so Cardias is something worth considering. I do have the quarter cask, which is another really good whiskey, but there's one here that really stands out, and if you're not buying the 10 and you can afford the Lore, there it is, the Lore. An excellent choice. Your company will love it. Not heavily peated. It's not cask strength. I think it's about a 48. Very good whiskey. Now Lagavulin, they have them all over the place all the time. Whenever you watch my reviews, you see Lagavulin. So the 16 we know. The Distiller's Edition, nice whiskey. They're all 43s. And then you get into, I do have the Phoenix here I can point over toward, but the Phoenix is going to be a cask strength. They come out every year with a different presentation, and tequila. There was a tequila finished whiskey there last year. I forget what it is this year, but anyways, Lagavulin was a whiskey I drank a lot of it. Nick Hofferman edition as well. I drank a lot of it at one time. I'd probably drink less of it today, but it's certainly one of the whiskeys that everybody got started off, and certainly has helped, introduce Islay to everybody internationally. So the Kalila is in the vault, but if you're going to do a Kalila, which is, by the way, up toward Port Askag on the north end of the island, you would probably like a Gordon MacPhail 13-year-old. If you're just getting into peat, it's an excellent whiskey. Everybody likes the Kalila. Having said that, we did jump over Bullmore. Bullmore is here someplace. Yeah, the Bullmore whiskey. I've done quite a few reviews on Bullmore. I'm going to say that they have an 18 that has withstood time. Everybody seems like 18. It's a milder version of Islay. I do like their sherry cask. The new presentation they are doing. It's a different box. It's a darker box. They've got the 12, the 15, the 18, the 25, and on their way up. They have a lot of old whiskeys. You get up into the Aston Martin, you're paying a fortune. I don't have my Kilchoman's out here. Farm Distillery, Snag, Matcher Bay. I prefer the Snag. Their whiskeys are expensive, especially if you get into the aged ones. I find them quite expensive. They have their reasons. It's a farm distillery. It's a craft distillery. I do like the Loch Gorm. I'm glad that the 2025 is now a 10-year-old whiskey. That'll be my next purchase if I can see it if I see it in a liquor store, I'm grabbing it. So that is the Kilchoman Loch Gorm. It's the 10-year-old. I have sampled it. It's really good stuff. Okay, moving past Kilchoman, there's some new distilleries on the south end. Of course, Port Ellen. I don't have any Port Ellen, so we're going to wait a while to see it. Portron is the guys that purchased Tomar Distillery. They're starting up the Portron Distillery. It's not very far from Port Ellen. So you go to the north end, next to Kalila, just to the west is Ardnahoe. I don't have any Ardnahoes. It's one of the newer distilleries. But what I really want to focus on is just past Ardnahoe, one of the older distilleries, and one of the distilleries that no longer peats, but it peated right up into the 60s. It had peated whiskeys, and it was an isolated community. Literally built the highway in the 60s. You had to come in by boat. So it had its school. It was a community that was basically isolated, and that is Bunnahabhain. And we go to Islay. Bunnahabhain is the distillery I visit first. That is the one to me. Yeah, it used to be Lagavulin. So Bunnahabhain, the 12 is so consistent. It just through time is one of the most consistent, best values for your money. It's non-peated. It's a really good sherry-driven whiskey. So you see the 18 next to it. 18, if you can afford it. The 12 for sure is an absolute necessity. Bunnahabhain, this is the Fiddle Isle 2024 edition, the port cask, the ruby port cask. Really nice whiskey. I have the Canasta too, which is also was a festival whiskey. So these whiskeys are the whiskeys I usually, if I'm going to not buy, if I'm looking for anything exceptional on the Bunnahabhain line there, I'm looking for the festival whiskeys because they seem to put a little extra effort into them, okay? But Bunnahabhain, to me, there's a good story behind it, and it's a great whiskey. I've done lots of reviews on it, so now we're going to go down and focus on Bruichladdich. I always call it the Cinderella story. The Water of Life, the famous documentary. Jim McEwen and Mark Rainey. Yes, Jim McEwen jumped ship from Bullmore, went across the harbor after getting close to retirement and building up a lifetime, a career with Bullmore to start up a distillery with this Mark Rainier. It was a gamble, and he did it. And I bet you along the way there he was shaking his head, but somehow they pulled off a miracle, and they got it up and running, and it was so successful. They ended up selling it, and they actually made money on it. And so maybe that was the best thing that happened for Jim McEwen, for retirement, was the profit they made on it. But it's quite a story. If you get a chance, Water of Life. Bruichladdich. what have I got? Well, I'm going to do something different here because I've shown Brooklet through the years to you. There's the Port Charlotte that's hidden behind this Alberfeldy box here. That is the pack series. I have the 10, the Port Charlotte 10. I have the teal colored bottle barley, and the organic barley. I have the Octomore straight behind my head. You can see it there. The Octomore. And I have several Octomores. That's just the one I've thrown up there. I bought this whiskey. It's a Brooklet. Guy from Islay. He came out here to Vancouver, and he's got a bottling started, and he calls this Talent. And it's based on the old Talent Ghost Distillery that was close to where he lived on Islay, and it's long gone. It was kind of a farm distillery. And there was a bunch of these Talent bottles that came up, and I sampled a couple of them. There was a peated one. This is a 14 Brooklet. It's a Tempranillo cask. When I purchased it, I think I purchased it more as a collector. But Brooklet has some really good whiskeys, and for peated whiskey, if you're looking at Islay, you have to look at Brooklet. Well, I want to thank all of you that have hung in here with me, and it's time to summarize the evening. And what is my standout over the last year, or even maybe the last couple of years? This whiskey that I'm going to pull out here is probably whiskey you weren't expecting, because it's the Irishman 17. And trying to give credibility to this, and making sure that I'm, in all sincerity, giving you what I feel is the whiskey that has really stood out over the last year, if not over the last couple of years. And a lot of that is from my own personal experience. Somebody that actually has sampled a lot of whiskey in his life. And I am more of a sipper. So I like to sip on whiskey, and I like to have something that is going to be exceptional. We all do. And when we look at standouts, and everybody has their standouts, their whiskeys of the year or whatever, we all put a lot of value into this because we're giving that information to one another. And this particular whiskey here, in all sincerity, has really stood out, if not over the last year, over the last couple of years. So there you've had it. This is my standout whiskey. So as we finish off the 2025 season, and we're moving into the 2026 season, and the boys are still out on the road there, checking for drinking and driving. So on that note, I'm going to ask you to drink wisely, drink intelligently, and do not drink and drive. Until the next time, so long, Japan.